This is Biotecnika, and you're listening to India's first life science podcast, The Voice of Biotecnika.
Hello and welcome to the brand new episode of The Voice of Biotecnika. I'm your host Shekhar Suman, CEO at Biotecnika, and today I bring to you a very special guest. If you remember a few months ago in the 10th episode of our podcast in December 2018, my colleague Kajol Patel covered IndieBio, world's largest seed fund. In that episode, we talked about an outstanding personality who smells opportunity out of her research and turns it around into a company. Yes, you guessed it right. Today, I'm sitting with Mr. Arvind Gupta, the serial investor, entrepreneur, and founder at IndieBio. So welcome, Mr. Gupta, to the Voice of Biotecnika. I hope I'm audible.
Great to be here, Shekhar. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to speak with you and your audience.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. Let me take this opportunity to thank you for sparing out time for this episode. All right. So let us begin today's show by asking you how and when it all happened. When did you come up with the idea of IndieBio and how it all started?
Yeah, so it's kind of a long story, as long as my life, actually. So I studied genetic engineering in undergrad school at UC Santa Barbara, and I was interested in that early time of using genetic engineering to modify the genome of E. coli that are in our guts to be able to digest cellulose so we can eat plants and solve world hunger. What I learned was it took a long time and it was very difficult to do so. We didn't discover the science that would make that possible yet. And so it was an undertaking that was a little too large at the time. I also then went and did economics and eventually became an industrial designer. As a designer, I'm taking real hard problems and using creativity and a set of constraints to solve them. As a designer, I designed many of the things that people use every day, like the Samsung Galaxy Curve, Western Digital, my book, hard drives, things like that. But over time, I found that it wasn't quite as meaningful as some of the work that was becoming possible with biology. And so I saw that biology was getting cheaper and faster, and more people could do it, but investors hadn't caught up to the idea yet that any scientist can become an entrepreneur and build a world-changing company. And that left a gap in the marketplace for early seed stage investing in biotech. So I found Sean O'Sullivan, who started SOSV and ran Vertical Accelerators. And we were talking about me joining the firm, and I told him I'd like to build a biotech accelerator to take advantage of that gap and fund all of those entrepreneurs or scientists that want to be entrepreneurs that no one else was looking at, and use biology as a technology to solve massive world problems beyond the typical pharmaceuticals that were being done at the time. And so Sean agreed with that, and IndieBio was born.
Oh, that's great. So what I could understand from the website and the news around that, you're looking for world's best scientists who are working on to affect 1 billion people to join the program. So what, according to you, is the biggest challenge humanity faces today from the life science perspective, and in which you would be interested to invest on?
It's a good question. I think the biggest problem facing society, humanity today, probably the very biggest is climate change. Climate change affects every single person on the planet. It doesn't care if you're rich or poor, what race you are, anything like that. It's a collective problem. and it needs a biological solution in the end. And so why I like climate change as a problem area is because fundamentally we need to be able to do more with less. And almost everything we touch is biological. The food we eat is biological. And so if we are reinventing how we make food, we can fight climate change by using fewer resources. We also can provide more food for more people in a way that also doesn't ruin the planet. So I call that area of our investing thesis planetary health. In healthcare, the other side is, when we say 1 billion people, again, cancer, heart disease, real problems, rheumatoid arthritis. These are afflictions that affect billions of people around the world. And also, as we live longer and get higher standards of living, we need to be able to solve for many of these really tragic issues that affect everyone. Everyone has a family member that is afflicted by a disease that they wish they could have helped but couldn't do anything about it. And it's a very disempowering place to be for people. And it's something that I am intensely interested in solving for.
All right. So, Mr. Gupta, if we look at climate change or for that matter, healthcare, there are some very pressing issues like cancer, like the pollution, the global warming. How do you think a scientist can, turn around things here? What would be the biggest focus as a scientist one should have to work on this?
Yeah, so it's a good question. All you have to do as a scientist is look at what you've studied and see how it can affect the carbon cycle or how it can affect energy. So, for instance, you're a stem cell engineer. You could look at stem cells as a way of growing antibodies, which is what it normally is done. Or you could turn and say, hey, I think we can grow meat. Animal cow meat, but without the cow. All you're doing is changing the problem from the traditional area of pharmaceuticals and healthcare into other large-scale problems that are affecting global supply chains. So that's but just using creativity in the problem that you're solving, you will actually be able to take your skill set and translate it into something that can really change the world and affect many billions of people. And that we're starting to see that more and more out of scientists, the ability to think that way.
So, how does your 4-month program at IndieBio help scientists solve these problems which affect 1 billion people? How you go about, training them?
Yeah, what we do is we help them. So they're amazing scientists that come in and they're able to push on the technological. What we do is we help them understand how to translate that technological achievement into a way of explaining it to the public, but also explaining it to customers and building a business. The number one thing is for any of these solutions to work, they have to be adopted widely. And that means you have to create value. So one thing I like to say is we translate scientific insight into human value, and we help the companies figure out how to do that on their own. So that way we set them up to be able to go off and build world-changing companies.
Right. So at what point in time you feel that a scientist is ready to accelerate his research, and how do you predict that idea is worth $1 billion and investable for you?
Good questions. So I want to fund engineering. I don't want to fund science. So the science is ready when the science is understood. For instance, if you're saying to yourself, well, if I discover this principle, then I'll be able to build this company. that's not the right stage. You need to have built that, you need to have made that discovery. And then you could be saying, wow, I discovered that I can create an electrical current with bacteria. Now the question is, how do we turn that into a multi-billion-dollar battery company?
Right. Mhm. Okay. So, Mr. Gupta, if I understand properly, IndieBio is trying to accelerate and make research investable for the investors. So, why exactly a scientist should choose IndieBio over other incubators? What's the advantage they get if they are coming into IndieBio and enrolling themselves?
Well, if you're IndieBio, it's really our network. It's really our funding rate. And it's really the rest of the IndieBio community. I think that's the things that keep paying off for the founders over the entire course of their career. The people that you and get to know are top in the world, uh, and because of the shared experiences, they're friends for life. That's really the number one thing about IndieBio. I think I wouldn't for me I think it's important that scientists just go out and follow their dream, whether it's at IndieBio or any other accelerator or incubator. Is less important than amazing scientists working on world changing companies for the better. And so I hope that there's more and more accelerators and more money that gets poured into this industry because
Right.
we, we need these solutions.
So at IndieBio, let's call these wannabe entrepreneurs who are right now a scientist or a researcher as researchopreneur. So how do you prepare these researchopreneurs to raise the seed round? What exactly goes into preparing them for the big game of business because they have never been exposed to that world, right? So what exactly goes right inside IndieBio if we look at it from as an outsider?
What goes right in it?
Yes, what exactly happens? How do you prepare them?
Yeah, so basically, many people call it a boot camp, but it's very, very intense 4.5 months of time in which 15 companies sit next to each other, use a laboratory to de-risk the actual engineering of the product, of the science-based product, and make contact with customers and de-risk the business side so that they can raise $3 to $5 million by demo. That's the ultimate goal, and we do that through panel discussions every week. We do board meetings every 2 weeks. We have a very intense way of getting scientists prepared to truly be scientific entrepreneurs. We don't want scientists to stop being scientists, but we want them to graft the entrepreneur side of it.
So, Mr. Gupta, how about some success stories would you like to share today? How many scientists IndieBio has guided so far who turned into successful entrepreneurs? Could you let us know about some?
Sure, good question. So we've funded about 105 companies in the past 4 years. Of those companies, we've invested $26 million. Those companies have raised over $200 million total. They're worth collectively almost $1 billion. And we're looking at about 400 scientists that have made this transition now to entrepreneur that went through the program. And mind you, these companies then go on to hire dozens of people in many cases. So we've created well over 500 jobs in the area. So it's been pretty interesting and a pretty amazing ride.
Great. So who is your favorite among all these companies?
I don't really have any favorites, but some of the companies I'm cheering for, obviously Memphis Meat, but as starting cell-based meats, as a big risk we took that really paid off, that the time was right and the technology was right. But some of the more recent companies, let me explain some of the companies, just because I think the audience will understand how biology can be applied to so many things. For instance, we have a company called Tinctorium that's making indigo dye, but completely clean by brewing it in bacteria. And right now, it's an incredibly dirty and toxic process, done in many countries, including India, where workers are basically mistreated and not cared for in facilities. We have another company called New Culture that's making cheese without the cow. So how do you cheese is an area that is huge. There's no good alternatives for people who are vegetarian or non-animal based. Here's a way of figuring out how to do that. We have a computational biology company that's making drugs now, not for the target that you see today, but by mathematically evolving the organism, whether it's a cancer cell or a bacterium, targeting the evolutionary defenses that organism will gain from your initial drug. So it's the 1-2 punch therapy versus just the one punch. So these are this next level of thinking that we're starting to see at IndieBio, and it's rather exciting.
Okay, so I'm sure a lot of effort goes in building these companies and a lot of motivation. So from where do you get all this motivation? Who is your role model in regards to design and thinking abilities? How exactly, what really motivates you as an entrepreneur? Who is your role model?
4 years ago, 5 years ago, I would have said my wife. Today, I say my children, my two little girls. They're 2 and 4, and I know that they're going to inherit. They and all the other children of everyone on the planet are going to inherit this world that we're going to give them, and the path we're on is we're going to give them a broken shell of a planet, and without radical change and innovation, that's horrifying. We all, as parents, work really hard to try to give the best possible future for our children. And I think if we don't think about it from a broader view, what good is a great education and all of those things if they don't have clean air that they could even breathe, or they don't have a fish left in the ocean? It's important to think about that side as well. So they are I literally do my work for my wife.
Right. So, Mr. Gupta, I come from India where every startup feels there is a lack of funding. And after the Theranos debacle, I'm sure many investors in the US of A as well are very careful while onboarding any biotech company. So what, according to you, are the major obstacles which are restricting life sciences to create and establish itself as a sustainable multi-billion-dollar industry? Like we have the Googles and Ubers in the IT industry. What exactly is stopping us from creating a multi-billion-dollar company in this segment, according to you?
There's nothing stopping it. I mean, capital constraints are good. It forces creativity. I think it's really important to think about capital constraints to be a focus function. In other words, if you only have a couple $100,000, you're going to design your experiments really well to show at the end of the $200,000 that your product works, or the idea or the concept is proven. If you have $200 million, you're going to work really hard to try to show that you're worth $200 million. and that's a very, very distracting thing for founders. So, I think it's a great thing to have less money in the beginning, and it forces real good decision making. And what you do is you ladder your decision making up over time rather than try to do everything at once. And that's how you win.
Correct. Very well said, Mr. Gupta. So, while you are onboarding these companies, what are the red flags you should look for before you invest?
One is founders that don't match what they say. So if you have a founder with showing data and they can't tell you, and they're saying, oh, look at this, our CRISPR data, and they can't answer a fundamental question that they would have to know in order to generate that data, that's a problem. You generally are looking for people who are doing this for the right reasons, i.e. there's something extremely genuine about why they want to do this startup, not just because, of making money or trying to do a startup. That's the last. If we see that type of a founder, we walk away.
Right. So if today, if you have to invest, now you see life science industry is a huge industry. It consists of a lot of subfields like genomics, diagnostics, bio-IT, computational biology, and many more. So what area would you be very much interested in investing out of all these units of life sciences?
What's the very? I mean, we invest in all of them. I think it's really important that planetary health and human health are both equally important. If we don't have a planet, being really healthy isn't going to help you, and having a great planet but being really sick doesn't help either. So it's really about solving for both. I think the most important thing I like to invest in is creativity. Is someone who has inherent insight into a scientific principle and then uses creativity to find a perfect product that create value from with it.
Right. So, Mr. Gupta, why not go global with your idea and invest in some companies in the developing world? For example, Biotecnika or various such organizations in the developing countries. Why not go global with your ideas?
We'd like to one day. I mean, I think what we need to do is make sure that what we have in San Francisco is scalable. It's about people in the end, and so we have to find good people. If you can't just venture capital and doing this is highly personal and requires a very rare skill set, one that is both operator and investor. And so it's really, really hard. It's just really hard to do, and so therefore it's slow.
Right. So, before starting this podcast, also while I was talking to you, I told you that the reason we profiled IndieBio and you in particular is because we really feel that if there is a biotech icon, that's you. And icon in the world who has been really working forward to promote biosciences, that's you. So what our icon has learned so far in his journey?
Well, first of all, that's very sweet of you to say. What have I learned in my journey? I've learned that you will be surprised at the resilience, the creativity, and the drive of people when you give them a chance. And that's really important. Again, it's easy to think that something is impossible or no one will believe me or it's going to be hard. But when you give people a chance, they generally rise to the occasion that you've given them. And that to me is very powerful and again drives what I do.
Right. So that's really insightful, Mr. Gupta. Now, I was listening to one of your TED Talks, and you quoted, "Creativity is the currency of purpose." I was myself really, exhilarated to listen to that quote, and I have noted it down somewhere. I really want to know how a scientist should use his knowledge, which is research knowledge, not business knowledge, and his how can he use his scientific creativity to give rise to a purposeful, sustainable business idea? Because after all, it's going to be all about science, right? So we're talking about scientists who have creativity, but how do they translate it into a currency of purpose, according to you?
Sorry, say the last part.
How does creativity of the scientist translate into a purposeful, sustainable business?
Yeah. So the way that works is very, very simply the insight that they have into the science is not worth very much. Creativity is what is used in order to apply it to a change they're going to create in the world, and that change is their purpose, right? And so I use the idea of currency, right? Everyone thinks that it's money that makes everything happen. Money doesn't make the world go round.
True.
Creativity does. Yeah. Money just greases the wheels. And it's important, again, so purpose, when coupled with creativity, becomes unstoppable.
Right. All right. So that is really insightful, Mr. Gupta. Now, you see, in this current world scenario, we're also seeing a lot of companies like Udemy or Unacademy or various such companies which are coming up, and they are into technical education, but in software, but not in life sciences. How do you foresee the life sciences technical education as an industry?
It's going through a sea change right now, which is wonderful. I think it's becoming even more multidisciplinary than ever, where computational biology is coming in. There's many physicists are coming in, programmers. So you're seeing that biology is truly becoming truly what it is, which is the mixture of all of these different forces. Also, our tools of insight are getting better and better. In other words, I like to think about life sciences as in the same place today as physics was in 1870. Physics, you got the telescope, and you could see out into the stars, and you were able to get more data. And they got better and better telescopes to get better data. For life sciences, we're starting to get that with genomic data, with proteomics, with transcriptomes. Like with all of this data, we're going to start to uncover the fundamental laws of biology. We don't have laws of biology yet because we have never been able to get the data to find them. I believe that there are laws of biology that we don't know yet, and they will be discovered in the next 100 years.
That's really insightful, Mr. Gupta. Now, if I look at the number of companies which IndieBio has nurtured and invested upon, I'm sure to select these, companies, you must have rejected many ideas in the past, right? So, which idea do you think you regret not funding that idea, which you think you should have onboarded for IndieBio?
No, I don't know. I can't remember of any companies that I wish I funded that I didn't. We don't think that way. What we do is we look for massive problems to solve, and then fund companies to solve them that are solving them. That's really what we do. And so, like I said, my job is to take a risk, and at IndieBio we take lots of risk. So we never say no to a company because it's too risky. We say no to companies because there's a founder issue or some other issue that we think that stops us. So I don't ever wish I could have invested in the company. There's always a reason why we didn't, and we wouldn't change our mind in any case later on.
All right. So if you look at a scientist and when he's transforming into an entrepreneur, what do you think he should keep in mind while turning from a scientist to an entrepreneur?
That there are no answers in a book, and that you should be going out and talking to customers in order to find out the answers to questions, not trying to research them on Google.
Correct. So you should not research on Google, instead talk to the real customers and understand the issues. That's really something I should note down as the CEO myself. Right. So as we come to an end of our podcast, are there any shortcuts to get selected into IndieBio?
There's no shortcuts, but there are ways of making it easier, which is have a great founding team. We don't invest in single founders, and we don't invest in a great single founder with another person that's not helping them very much. So find a founding team, demonstrate that your technical insight can be made into a prototype, and most importantly, be working on something that you're passionate about that could affect 1 billion people or $1 billion in value.
Right. So while we conclude this podcast, any message you want to give to young researchers of the world?
No, keep studying, keep pushing on, and the world, there's a huge universe of options out there for making an impact. And you could join startups, you could be a startup founder, you could go to academia, but making sure that you're doing what you want to do in life is the most important thing. And there's always a way. You just believe in yourself and you'll be fine. I think a lot of people, it's hard as a scientist to start to believe in yourself when the entire system is built around a ladder up to the principal investigator. But don't succumb to that. Just believe in yourself. You can do it.
With this, we come to an end of our podcast. Mr. Gupta, thanks a lot for your insightful talk this evening. And I'm sure our audiences have learned a lot from you today. Mr. Gupta, I personally believe that opportunities come only to those who are ready for it. And I'm really grateful to you and IndieBio that you gave us this opportunity to interact with you. And thanks a lot for coming up with your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure. Great question.
Yes.
I have.
So people, that was Mr. Arvind Gupta, who heads IndieBio, world's largest biotech seed fund. And if you have a research idea which you think can solve problems of 1 billion people, do not wait. Head straight to IndieBio.co. That is IndieBio.co. And thank you, Mr. Gupta, once again. This is Shekhar Suman, CEO and Managing Director at Biotecnika, signing off. See you next week with a brand new podcast of the Voice of Biotecnika. Thank you.